Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2004 historical fantasy film titled Finding Neverland. This goes back to 2004. It was directed by Marc Forster. Let's see, it was produced by Richard Goldstein and Nellie Bellflower. The script was written by David McGee. It was based on the novel of the man who would be Peter Pan. That is the novelist. His name was Alan Mead. The score was done by Jan P. Kaczmarek. The cinematography by Roberto Schaefer. And the editing was done by Matt Chessie. And the stars of the movie are Johnny Depp. We also have Kate Winslet. We have Dustin Hoffman in his second Peter Pan themed movie. No, don't worry, this is not Hook 2. So Hoffman is not putting on the Captain Hook costume again. As far as I know, his Captain Hook was swallowed by a giant mechanical crocodile. Tick tock. Tick tock. It also has Julie Christie, Rahda Mitchell, Freddie Highmore, Nick Rowd, Joe Prospero, Luke Spill, Ian Hart, Mackenzie Crook, Kelly MacDonald, Angus Barnett, Toby Jones, Tim Porter, Ellen Essel, Jimmy Gardner, and Paul Whitehouse. Now, as you all know, this movie is not, and I repeat, it is not a Peter Pan movie or a spin on the Peter Pan movie. It's not a biopic either of James M. Barrie, the man behind probably one of the greatest plays, musicals of all time, Peter Pan. No, it was more about James M. Barrie in his quest to write one of his best pieces, which was Peter Pan. And the people who inspired him during this whole process. Because if it was a James M. Barrie biopic, we would be looking at more than just Peter Pan. But since Peter Pan was his signature, his meal ticket, his bread and butter, the emphasis is J.M. Barrie focusing on writing one of his greatest pieces and the people around him. What I like about this movie is that even though it might be inspired by actual events, it might be inspired by real characters, but I like the whole juxtaposition between reality versus imagination. Now, reality versus imagination has always been, bitter rivals, just like science and religion. How did we evolve? Did we evolve religiously through Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit and the talking serpent? Or do we have this Darwinian approach that we started as monkeys and then just evolved? Because just like science versus religion, there is no right answer and there is no concrete wrong answer either. Just like reality versus imagination. Of course, reality is going to probably in this movie play off as the bad guy, the villain, and the one that's in on the wrong, while imagination seems to play off as the good guy because imagination doesn't have limitations. I mean, what's better to live? Is it better to live in a world where, you know, the reality of life is not all rainbows and lollipops? Or should we live in a world of imagination where life is rainbows, lollipops, and lots of endless good stuff that comes with it? In this case of this movie, Finding Neverland, and through the mind of J.M. Barrie, of course, imagination is going to come more into the favor of the harsh, cruel depths that reality has for us. And yes, reality can be cruel. And it usually is. But in the world of imagination, life is a lot more fun, a lot more free, and it does not plant you to the bottom of the ground. And this is where J.M. Barrie likes to live his life. And sometimes it's always good to live in the world of imagination. But of course, you can't have too much of a good thing because unfortunately reality sinks in. And this is kind of like what you would see in Finding Neverland. We have real characters with imaginative, fictional, fantasy settings that come along with it. You see a little bit of both worlds, only for us to decide which is the world we should choose to live in. Reality versus imagination. Like I said, when it came to J.M. Barrie writing his piece, he wasn't alone in this. He wasn't just sitting at his desk, jotting down notes. Sometimes I think when it comes to writing some of your most brilliant pieces, you have to go out and look for something that will inspire you, that will be your muse, that will be your guiding light. And that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did when he befriended the Llewellyn Davis kids. George, Jack, Peter, and Michael. There should be a fifth son named Nicholas, but I guess they couldn't find somebody to play a toddler, or maybe it might be a little overwhelming, so they decided to just stick with 4 kids and just say Nicholas was not in existence, which I think is a little unfair. But, you know, reality is life isn't fair, or other things like that. And of course, you know, the 4 kids were the inspiration for his Peter Pan fictional characters, which were the Lost Boys. And they really were lost boys. I mean, if you've ever read Peter Pan or seen the movie Peter Pan or all its other incarnations, you'll realize that the Lost Boys don't have parents. But then again, in the world of Never Ever Land, there are no parents. And that Peter Pan was kind of almost like their legal guardian or illegitimate guardian. Well, the Llewellyn Davis kids were the definitive Lost Boys. They didn't have a father because their father died. And they didn't really have much of a mother because their mother was falling ill. So J.M. Barrie arbitrarily places himself as an illegitimate guardian for these 4 boys. And he persuades them to join him in his world. And in his world, it's filled with adventure, imagination, surrealism. And it'll take you to places that you can have only dreamed of. And that you never have to grow old, or that you don't have to live by the standards of reality. And that's kind of the world that he lives in. And that's how he interacted with the kids. Many people might probably think this is a little eccentric and a little bizarre, but I think it's just people are just so stoic, so withdrawn from their own reality life that they never could be able to kick back and enjoy the world of imagination. I know that's easier said than done, and I know the stresses in the real world does overcome certain individuals, but on the case of J.M. Barrie. And then you have the character of their mother, Sylvia Llewellyn Davis, whose last name is Du Maurier, played by Kate Winslet. She was actually the inspiration to the character of Wendy, because Wendy even though Wendy was kind of playing an older sister type, she was actually she had that maternal. The character of Wendy in Peter Pan was kind of almost a maternal-like individual, being the oldest daughter to the Darling family, which also consisted of younger brother John and toddler brother Michael. And of course, you know the names: George, Jack, Peter, Michael. They were all inspiration to the characters of John and Michael. And then, of course, you also have their grandmother, whose name is I forget, Madame Du Maurier, played by Julie Christie. She kind of represents everything that J.M. Barrie opposes, which means that she could be the inspiration for the character of Captain Hook. And maybe even because she's old and wrinkly, she could be the inspiration to the character of Tick-Tock, the crocodile. But then again, the crocodile himself from the Peter Pan movies and other stories, the crocodile himself is the metaphor of death. After all, his name, the crocodile's name is Tick-Tock. And of course, when you're dying, the circle of death comes over, and the hands on the watch are getting faster. Tick-Tock. 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 So a lot of these characters all seem to come to life in J.M. Barrie's world. And these are all the inspirations to one of the greatest playwrights of all time, Peter Pan. And there are a lot of great memorable scenes. And many people might probably think that the bonding between J.M. Barrie and the four kids might seem a little out of sorts. Because let's face it, in today's society, you don't normally get necessarily see grown men interacting with little boys like you do today, because, in this day and age, they could be badly misunderstood as being pedophiles. But there's really has been never any foolproof that J.M. Barrie was ever found in a suggestive position with these four boys. It was all just, basically with him, it was all just the world of make-believe, fun and games. But when it came down to it, everything that had transpired on that day, he would write it down. And I think this could be like I said, when it comes to writing a play, you don't just sit down or just write a play and just let all your imaginations. You have to go out and physically get involved, meet people, see which people inspire you to write this material. So Finding Neverland was definitely really an enchanting tale for the masses of all to enjoy. When it came out in 2004 in theaters, I definitely had the pleasure of seeing this movie, and it was truly something that you don't see every day from life in the fast lane pictures that has infested the screen over the past 3 years. It's definitely a rare find to see an exhibition of a story filled with fantasy, imagination, and an original story about the inspiration of J.M. Barrie and the muses he took in creating one of the greatest children's stories of all time, Peter Pan. Johnny Depp was definitely at the top of his game here as Mr. Barrie, a Scottish writer who falls through troubled times because his previous work was a complete bust. I think it was called Little Mary, was his previous work. It was met with some pretty harsh critiques, and people often even were questioning whether he actually has the makings of being a successful playwright, or will he just continue the rest of his life living in a world of complete mediocrity. Obviously, he wanted to create something more extraordinary in hopes that he will get exceptional fame. I mean, he's wrote other stuff besides Peter Pan, before and after. I mean, the guy continued to still write plays even after the success of Peter Pan, but none of them just never measured up. Once again, like I said, Johnny Depp is once again playing a Scot. It's like, geez, the guy seems to like speaking with a Scottish accent. I mean, I can't blame him. He's quite good at it. But it seems like a lot of his movies, he likes to sound like a Scot. I mean, he does it a lot of times. But, that's just who he is. I mean, I guess that's the kind of accent he chooses. I mean, he did the Scottish accent a little bit when he was doing Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. And he also did that when he was the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. As he was walking through the park, he runs into Sylvia Llewellyn-Davis and her 4 sons, and they get together for a warm and friendly chat. But as the film progresses, the Llewellyn-Davis clan, especially the 4 boys, they get closer, and it eventually leads Barrie to write his greatest work, which would become a classic in the making. And yes, when he took the boys, the Llewellyn-Davis boys, on through their journey, he took them to a land where you never have to grow up, where you never have to get sick, where you never have to die. And it would be kind of like a retreat for these kids, just so that the world that they live in could be a little less fearful. And I guess that's what he was trying to do. He knew that their mother was not in the best of health, and if she dies, they're going to be stuck with their grandmother, who they totally despise. And I know that he doesn't want them to go and live with their stiff of a grandmother. So he wants to try to do everything to comfort these boys into realizing that this world is not as cruel as it pans out. And if you could make the world, less cruel, then you'll be much, much better emotionally. And I think that's what he was trying to do. The centerpiece of the film is on Barry and his closeness to the Davis clan by using his observation skills to understand children's behavior. You know how adults tend to like to take kids out of imagination by telling them that the only world they should live in is the real world, where everything is honest and legit, and that the world of fantasy is just a bunch of hyperbole and bullshit. These realists are the people who like to take away the freedoms of enjoying life. These are the people who like to say that Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny doesn't exist, just so that they could sabotage the freedom and the enjoyability of a kid's life. Because they want them to adapt to the real world. Whereas, in J.M. Barrie's case, you want to believe in Santa Claus, you want to believe in the Easter Bunny, why should I stop you guys? Believe in what you want. Just as long as you believe in yourselves. Hey, if you want to believe the moon is made of green cheese, well then believe the world is that the moon is made of green cheese. But that's kind of like what he was doing. He understands that these are kids and that they want to live as kids. And he's like, why should I stop them? When have I ever met a kid who didn't stop dreaming? And why should I be the one to stop them? Let them believe what they want. You can only be a kid once. Once they get older, then they could stop believing this stuff. But right now, they're young, and let them believe what they want. Nobody has a right to take that away from them. And that's kind of like what his character was like. He was understanding children's behavior, and that's what led him more into his writing of his greatest classic piece. And he took them to a path that led to the creation of Peter Pan. And of course, he also added Indians and pirates for added texture to this iconic children's story. And I think he did a serviceable job. Obviously, the kids were going through a lot of stress. Sooner or later, their mother's going to die and they're going to be left without a father. And they could end up having one of two options, either being put up in foster care or to live with their hard-nosed grandmother who's just so locked in her real world, and that she thinks that people who live in an imaginative world are a bunch of idiots. And of course, obviously, they don't like her, but they're probably not going to enjoy what will happen once their mother goes. We can feel the stresses with these kids, as I will explain a little bit later on. Marc Forster was the director of this movie. He directed the 2001 Oscar-winning movie Monsters Ball. He was behind the director's chair in this one, which adds magic towards the character of Barry as we follow him through the whole process that led to his masterpiece, that is Peter Pan. Johnny Depp, like I mentioned before, is excellent in his portrayal as Barry, and the Scottish accent was spot on, and his performance was definitely quite sublime. But like I said, he may have carried a lot of the heavy load, but he could not have done it alone. He was also joined by an eclectic group of supporting players, and they also turned in some great performances as well. Kate Winslet as Sylvia Llewellyn-Davis du Maurier. She was also very, very effective in her role. Many people might have complained that she didn't really have much to do. But then again, what do you expect? She was sick. She was ill. She can't really be very proactive. And I think she did a great job at portraying a sick, dying young lady. And she's probably just as much as suffering the access to what will happen with the boys now that both their parents are dead. Where are they going to go? Are they going to become orphans? Are they going to be living with their hard-nosed grandmother? But of course, if they were to make decisions of their own, they would love nothing more than to have Mr. Barry be their legal guardians. Julie Christie, I have to admit, as her role as Baroness du Maurier, she definitely does kind of play off the villain character. But when you think of a villain character in her caliber, we're not actually thinking of somebody who is menacing, macabre, or evil. She's just a very hard-nosed individual who just does not seem to think or has ever lived in the world of fiction or imagination. She is a person who's permanently stuck in realism, but we can also tell that even though she lives in the eternal world of realism, we can tell that she's not exactly a very happy person, as obvious. She's not evil, but she is very badly misunderstood, or she just misunderstands the whole concept of what J.M. Barrie and his motives are. And she may not particularly like it or approve of it, but the reality is he's just trying to comfort them, which is something that she would probably find virtually impossible with these kids, since she would rather want them to live in the real world, as opposed to him wanting to take them out of the real world and into his imagination. Dustin Hoffman, once again, he is back in a Peter Pan film. No, he's not going to put on the Captain Hook suit. This time he's kind of playing sort of like a confidant to J.M. Barrie, kind of like a personal assistant. And just really his role is basically just he wants the best out of Mr. Barrie. And, of course, he's still kind of worried about if this Peter Pan is going to be a success, or is it going to be another one of his doomed failures like his other playwrights before this one? So don't worry, this is not Hook 2. This is Finding Neverland after all. And aside from these 4 tremendously successful Oscar-winning, Oscar-nominated performances, the real big star in this, the real scene stealer, would have to be the character who was the inspiration for the Peter Pan character himself, Peter Davis, who was played by actor Freddie Highmore. Freddie Highmore really, really tugs at your heartstrings. You feel really bad for him. You feel really bad for his other 3 brothers, even though it should be 4 brothers, since there were 5 kids that the Llewellyn-Davis clan had. I don't know why they took Nicholas out. I guess because he was the youngest. I don't know the whole story of that. They just couldn't find a person to play young Nicholas, or maybe because 4 kids was a bit of a handful, they decided to just downsize it. Yes, hi, Mom. And they decided to just take him out of the equation. I don't know if there's any living members of the Llewellyn-Davis family, but I'm sure if there was a weakness, leaving out Nicholas would be kind of unjustified. And besides that, Nicholas Llewellyn-Davis was the one who lived at least a much more longer life compared to his other 4 older siblings. I mean, there was a couple of them who actually died very, very young. I mean, we had their oldest son, George. He was only 21 when he died, and I think we also had their other brother, Jack. He too also took his life away at a relatively young age. So yes, I guess you could say that I guess these kids will never grow old, because 2 of the 5 kids died relatively young themselves, even younger than their parents. I mean, Arthur Llewellyn-Davis was 43 years old when he succumbed to illness, and their mother was 44 when she died, succumbing to, I believe it was stomach cancer. Yeah, I know. It's one of those, you don't get it, it gets you. But like I said, they did handle the whole grief thing very, very well. And yes, even though you feel bad for the 4 Llewellyn boys, especially Peter Davis, it's not like the whole movie was a tearjerker at all. No. I mean, yeah, okay. You can't probably stomach to see a mother dying while trying to do her best to raise their kids. They need an adult figure in their life. She can't really do much because of her health. Mr. Barry is more than happy to welcome his services. Maybe some people might say he's a little bit too welcoming. But they need, I mean, kids need adults to mentor them in life. And I think that's what this movie was about. And I think that's what Mr. Barry his intentions were this whole time. Who else will they turn to? Not their grandmother. But yes, you definitely take a lot of pity for not just Peter, but for, George, Jack, and Michael as well. And, they also turned in pretty effective roles. I think the reason why Peter might get a little more publicity is because he was the one who would touch your hearts a little bit more. I think he was the one who was probably suffering the most grief of them all. And, his scenes were very emotional, but at least it wasn't, like, too tearful. Yes, I know as we come towards the end of the movie, Sylvia passes away, and the boys are eventually led to the care of their grandmother. But at least it ended on a bit of a happy note, as Mr. Barry eventually is like um, eventually signs a contract making him a legal guardian, as he and Madame du Maurier will now get to have joint custody of the 4 boys. So at least it had a bittersweet ending. Yes, it was sad that the mother died, but at least they're under proper care, and that they're going to be watched by both their grandmother and Mr. Barry as their legal guardians. So it did turn out pretty well for them. But if you really look at the epilogue here, like I've mentioned before, these Barry kids, these Llewellyn Davis kids, well, like I said, a couple of them died young. When George was like 21 years old, Michael was 20. Jack and Peter, they lived to the ages of 63 and 65. And Nicholas, the last of the Llewellyn Davis kids, he passed away in 1980 at the age of 76 years old. He was probably the one who lived at least well into old age, or at least, because I even sometimes think if you go at 63, 65, well, that's still a long life, but it's still kind of young. But so it's a pretty interesting piece of history. Like I said, they took real characters. Of course, there's a lot of dramatization, but at least, they did do some great balancing with fantasy versus reality. And I think that by balancing them both, we had a great, effective way of storytelling. I truly believe this is probably one of the best films that came out in 2004. If you've seen movies like Big Fish, then this movie will surely please you. Personally, I really think that this was a very effective film. I highly recommend it. It's a good account of how people who surround you in your life, you can come up with many great hooks and angles in capturing whatever endeavor that you wish to pursue. I highly recommend you just guys to see this movie, Finding Neverland. If I was to give it a scale out of 10, I would give Finding Neverland a 9. It's a really good movie. Highly recommend it. So I guess this ends my Rahda review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.